in the chat if there's any problem seeing this, but hopefully you are getting the slides. The topic I want to talk about is traditional long-term care, dead or alive, in the large employer worksite market. I hear all the time experts say it's dead. You got everything's full underwriting mostly, and you're going to have declines even if you're using a simplified underwriting, and employers just hate that. And it's often the CEO or the CFO or some other executive getting declined. Yep, that is all true. There will be declines if you're doing traditional long-term care. 100% agree with that. But I'd like to offer a different look at this, a different solution. It's just full disclosure. Let the employer know that, yes, people are going to get declined. And sometimes it might be the CFO or the CEO's wife, whatever the situation is. But 30% declined also means 70% approved. And, you can look at 30 to 40 to 25% declines, but that still means the vast majority of the people get approved and get coverage they wanted and were looking for. Should really 70% of the population overpay for a product and underinsure just for the 30% that might get declined? Or in reality, 30% will get declined. So I think there's a better option. And we'll show you what we mean by overpay and underinsure when it comes to this market. Because I really think what we're contrasting here is the life with long-term care market, the worksite one that has guarantee issue and those sorts of things, and the traditional long-term care market, which we've all been doing for years, which no longer has guarantee issue. And so if we look at some premiums, when you're buying small amounts, it really doesn't matter, right? A 50-year-old for a small policy pays $33 for traditional or $49 for a life with long-term care. But when we raise that policy amount to say, I want $300,000 of coverage and I just want long-term care, we end up paying just under $200,000 under traditional, but almost $370 a month for the life with the long-term care, which is wonderful if you need life insurance, right? If someone feels they need life insurance as well, that's perfect and very worth it. And it makes sense that the product's more expensive because you're getting two products and you're going to get a benefit from one, or in many cases, both of them. So there's a lot of talk about plan design, right? Is it better to have, short durations with big benefits or long durations with smaller benefits? Because really, the traditional long-term care, it's much easier to get the short benefit for a big benefit for a short duration. I did Unum in my previous life. We still do a lot of the Unum, and we would get applications that would come in that they'd pay for lifetime benefits for a $2,000 a month benefit with no inflation. And we would try to call those enrollees back and say, hey, I see you're applying. Congratulations for that. But what you're really going to be left with, since you're buying this at 50, is a lifetime of almost useless benefits. And we would often try to convince them to go with a higher benefit amount with a 3-year or a 6-year benefit with potentially some inflation. So this is a case study that's a real deal that I just dealt with last month. And this employer chose to go with life with long-term care because there was guarantee issue. We showed them both. They kind of were thinking of doing both, and they ended up, the leadership said, no, we don't want people getting declined. That's a problem. Well, so I'm working with the head HR person who is 60 years old and has dealt with her dad in a facility and knows how much it costs. So she wanted $12,000 a month. Well, and she had no life insurance needs. She and her husband had no kids. They had helped their nephews and nieces just fine. They had no debt. So they didn't want life insurance. So we priced her $12,000 a month of benefit with a 4-year duration because it was, 24 months plus 24 months kind of thing. And the premium was $800 a month for just her, and her husband was 2 years older. And she was like, that is crazy. I can't pay that even if I wanted to. So we said, well, let's partially insure that. And so we took it down to $6,000 a month. And again, she did get $150,000 of life insurance for that. But again, she looked at $400 a month and said, I don't want to pay $400 a month. I don't need life insurance. So we're quoting her traditional long-term care, which for the same $6,000 a month and $300,000 of coverage for 4 years is $200 a month. So it really isn't an either or in our opinion, because there's people that need both. I'm a fan of life with long-term care. We've sold a ton. We're enrolling a bunch now, but it helps solve other needs as well. And so I'm a fan of it because, back early in my career, the Accounting Standards Board came out with Rule 112, and it said you got to have your future retiree costs in your today's liabilities, and magically, poof, retiree life insurance and retiree health insurance disappeared from the benefits world pretty quickly. And so it's really wonderful, as you can see in the little chart down below on the right, that the group term's wonderful, but it ain't following you into retirement. Most employees retire with no life insurance, and that's sad. So the life with long-term care helps solve that. And it provides good long-term care benefits with a good contract, 2 of 6, right? Just like the normal long-term care. So there's a place for both, and it helps people of different ages, because the young people don't give a rip about long-term care. The 30-year-olds and most 40-year-olds don't care about long-term care. They like the permanent life insurance. Oh, and they get some long-term care along with it. So that's a wonderful solution for them. And in most cases with larger employers, it's guarantee issue. So we really don't say either or. We say you can do one, you can do the other. Here's the pros and cons of each one of those. And there are significant pros and cons of both of them, right? Or you can do both. And we don't do both at the same time. We do both one after the other. We do the traditional long-term care first, knowing people are going to get declined. And we come back the following year or later that year, 2 years later, with a guarantee issue solution. So let me also bring up the fact that traditional long-term care has way better tax treatment, right? For employer-paid premiums, for employee-paid premiums. And if you're in the employer market, most employers or most larger employers have an HSA plan. Well, pre-tax for a product that's already cheaper is a pretty good win, again, for 70% of the population. So, I really think we should be offering either or and not just throwing one to the wayside. And here's another case study that was from 2022, an employer with about 12,000 employees. And the target population, what we see as a target, employees between 40 and 60, making $70,000 or more, right? Our average buyer in the Worksite is 51 years old. We don't get a lot of 70-year-olds. We don't get many, 35-year-olds or 40-year-olds. So out of that 12,000, we really looked at, there's 3,100 people with the age and the income that fit our buyer. And so we did traditional long-term care, and we told them up front, people are going to get declined. We got 21% of the target population to enroll, right? Pretty good participation for a voluntary product with a large employer in a self-serve environment. 17% actually we submitted applications for, because our system kicked a lot of them out due to height and weight, diabetics, or all the other knockout questions. A bunch of others got through, and obviously some of those got declined in underwriting. We ended up with, for the Worksite, not bad, about $1,350 an app. We got 45% of the spouses applied, and since only about 50% of Americans are married, we got almost all the spouses as well for those that applied. And that's based on how the enrollment platform works. And it ended up being almost $600,000 of premium for the traditional carrier or carriers we were using, because we were using multiple carriers at the time because no one had coverage everywhere and by state. So we did have multiple carriers. the system would just ask them, what state do you reside in? And then it would show them that plan. So it's not much different. If that freaks employers out, just explain most of them have more than one medical plan too, right? Employees have different medical plans based on what they're doing and where they live. It's the same thing with this. We have not had employers complain about having to use multiple carriers to cover multiple states. Total decline during this enrollment, 248. And some of those 248 were in the HR department and benefits department. And guess what they said? We want that guarantee issue product you told us about. So lo and behold, next year, we're going to be enrolling the life of the long-term care as well, right? To pick up the young people that want some permanent life and to pick up those that were not eligible for the traditional long-term care due to health issues. And the carriers aren't going to participate in this, this kind of thing if it's a 300 life group or a 400 life group. But once you get a couple of thousand lives, they get that there's different needs and that perhaps this isn't a bad solution after all. So we've done a lot of these. We're doing more. And I would tell you, when we present this idea, so far about half of the employers say, yeah, I like that. Both. We'll do the both. It's just a timing issue, right? It takes a couple of years, but what I've done is I've pre-sold another product into my employer client up front. So I know next year I'm going to be doing a whole nother enrollment with them for a new product. And we're going to continue to enroll the other product, the traditional as well. The other 50% of the employers go, nope, that ain't happening. We're not doing two products. We had John Hancock and they left. And then we got, so-and-so and they left. And then we got so-and-so and they left. And they want nothing to do with traditional long-term care. That's okay too, because then they default to the life with long-term care. So rather than selling, do you want long-term care? Yes or no? I'm saying, which of these do you want? Of course, you're going to buy one, but you should really consider both. And guess what? They usually buy one or both, as opposed to the yes/no decision. And so we've had good success with this. We are going to continue doing this. If you want to talk about this or have ideas or concerns about this, let us know. The other thing we typically do is we do all our programs bank draft, EFT, ACH, whatever you call it, because the other thing the employer will say, well, I don't want to administer two separate plans. Well, you don't have to administer anything. These are all bank drafts, so there's no billing. They're already ported, right? They've already got it as their policy, so there's no port process for terminations. So the administrative issue for both of these products, if you do a bank draft, is, Mr. Employer, you have to send out some emails. How many? We'd like 8, but if you send out 3 to 5, we can live with it. And help us schedule some webinars and send out the notices on the webinars. That's the employer's lift. So we're big fans of both. We're big fans of either one, either or, and we're big fans of ACH. I can tell you persistency is a real problem anytime you're doing payroll deduction. And if you go ACH, the persistency issue and the employer lift absolutely disappears. So I really appreciate NAIFA for having us to this. I am ending early, which for those of you that know me, never happens. It's maybe not late enough for me to say I got to get to answer the door for the trick-or-treaters. But I believe I get the pleasure of turning this over to Cindy Harris, one of our favorite traditional long-term care carriers. So Cindy, I'm going to turn it over unless there's questions, which I'm happy to take. One, Ken Lake said, on group LTC with underwriting, I would love to know ideas on how to offer comparable benefit to employees who do not qualify. That's what we do. We do the traditional long-term care first, let people get declined, and then come back in with the guarantee issue product later. And that's how we solve the folks that get declined. If the employer doesn't want to do a 2 full-scale offer, then we'll take some of those declines that we know might be eligible for a hybrid on a 1-on-1 basis, if the employer lets us, and we'll go back and offer a 1-on-1, or we can offer the short-term care. We have to lay all this out to the employer ahead of time and let them make, the choice on that. Let me see. Yes, my email's there, Kevin@aegisnetwork.com. You can do group long-term care. The question was, how small can you go on group long-term care? You can do worksite long-term care because it's really not true group anymore. There's worksite long-term care. And we go pretty far down, because if it becomes like a 10 or 12 life group, we'll just do a concierge where we're actually offering individual products on a one-on-one basis. Once you get to, hundreds or thousands, then we have an enrollment platform that can enroll the traditional long-term care carriers out there. Cindy Harris, coming up next, has an enrollment platform where you can enroll. And we built one for most of the other carriers historically. Life Secure's smooth and clean and wonderful to use, so there was no need to rebuild that one. I guess that's it. Just let me see, any new questions? Thank you all for your time. Happy Halloween. Thanks to Carol and the crew at NAIFA.